So it is my distinct privilege to invite General Ajay Kumar Singh, PVSM, AVSM, YSM, SM, VSM, to deliver the special address. A former Southern Army Commander and current member of the National Security Advisory Board, General Singh is a scholar soldier whose leadership uniquely blends strategy with vision and spirituality. And I've just realized that Sir has done PhD in spirituality. That's amazing, so very impressive. His insights continue to guide India's national security thinking. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming him to the stage.
Jai Bharat. It's a proud privilege to be here standing on the podium and addressing you on a very important subject. And that is primarily Atmanirbharta. What are the challenges and what is the way ahead? So I'm going to restrict my keynote address to these three aspects. And why are we talking about Atmanirbharta? So while a lot of speakers here have spoken about the changing geopolitical landscape, but I'll delve on it just a little further. What has changed today primarily, if you look around, Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Hamas, what's happening in the Middle East, in the West Asia, even in our neighborhood, what just happened in Nepal, what happened earlier in Lanka, Sri Lanka, and what happened in Bangladesh, what is happening in Africa. I think it's all a portent of that the entire world seems to be in a geopolitical flux. And of late, what has changed importantly is primarily the propensity of the state to use military force. So there is a political legitimacy to military aggression, which was not there earlier. Earlier people, took time and the force was not used in the blatant manner that it is being used. It is just the beginning. More as I look at it and the more as I read into the future, you will find that more and more it will come. For India, for us, especially in a volatile neighborhood that we have both Pak on our west and on our north and the east we have China, two very potent adversary. And I don't even call them two very potent adversary. I call them, it is one front. It is not a western front or a northern front. Because in Op Sindoor, we saw it very clearly. It emerged that Pakistan, while it was in the front, but at the back, there was Chinese technology, there was Chinese weaponry. I think that becomes more important. More importantly for India at this stage, apart from that is we have a continental threat and we also have a maritime threat. So it is under this landscape, under this geopolitical landscape that I'm talking of Atmanirbharta. For ourselves, our hierarchy, our political hierarchy has given us a very clear vision ahead. Viksit Bharat 2047. And I feel Atmanirbharta is the blueprint that is going to make that Viksit Bharat 2047 become a reality. And that's why we are talking of Atmanirbharta today. We are the second largest armed forces in the entire world, the second largest. And there's a time when we were importing more than 80% of our hardware is imported. I don't think we can be a Viksit Bharat 2047 unless and until Atmanirbharta kicks in and it becomes a reality. We have seen of late in the conflict that are around the corner that are happening, that your supply chain, what was mentioned earlier, there could be disruption in the supply chain. We could also be trumped. Trumped is a new word. What every day in the morning, you have no idea what tweet Trump is going to give. So we can be trumped. The affiliations are changing. The alliances are changing. So in such kind of a landscape, I think it's very important that we get, what is it that is important? And a lot of people say, if you see the word Atmanirbharta, the first is Atma, and the second is Nirbharta, self. The self is extremely important in this. And that's why, while Dr. Angachal introduced me. She said, I have done PhD in spirituality. So the self is related with understanding yourself. And I always tell people that most of the issues that are plaguing the world today are primarily arising from the fact that we have top leaders who are leading the countries, who are leading the international organizations, who do not understand self. Unless and until you understand self, you have Atm Gyan, you have self-realization, then how the hell are you understanding and carrying out any world affairs? You first must understand yourself. And that's why it's important, because once you understand self, you are self-realized, then only the next and the best will follow. Because you will get a self-belief, you will have self-confidence, you will have pride in yourself. And unless and until India has pride in itself, unless and until India is confident, unless and until India is self-reliant, I don't think we will be able to achieve the idea of Viksit Bharat by 2047. And that's why the self-reliance and Atmanirbharta is extremely important. And people say that we are there. Well, we were there. There was a time, and for a very long time, we are the only, one of the only surviving civilization. Only two survive today. One is the Chinese civilization and one is Indian civilization. Chinese civilization has basically veered from their civilizational values. India is the only civilization which is still sticking to its values. And our values date back not just few hundred years back, they date back about 5,000 years back, maybe possibly much more than 5,000 years also. We were great then, we are still great, and we would continue to be great. I think that is the confidence we need to have in ourselves if we have to sort of, have this idea of Viksit Bharat 27 become a complete reality. So against this backdrop, I'm going to, when I say that we were great, I will tell you, like, for example, there was a study done by Rand Corporation, commissioned by Pentagon in 90s, that actually surmised and came to conclusion that India lacks a strategic culture. There was a study done about 10 years later, again by Rand Corporation, commissioned by Pentagon. We said, no, India has some strains of strategic culture. But to those people who did the study, and I want to tell that India has a strong strategic culture which is dating back more than 5,000 years back. If you see Mahabharata and read Mahabharata and Ramayana, they are blueprint of our strategic culture. In Mahabharata, after the Pandavas had won the victory, and Bhishma Pitamaya was lying in Sarshaya, it is Lord Krishna who told Yudhishthira that if you have to learn about Rajdharma, please go to Bhishma Pitamaya and learn how Rajdharma, what is Rajdharma and how it has to be applied. And Bhishma Pitamaya says that the first duty of a king is to look after the subjects. And he gives us what are the important attributes of the king. He also says a king must not have an ideology. A king must not have an ideology. These are very, very important issues. It says a lot of things about Rajdharma. Not only that, our Vishnu Smriti, our Manu Smriti, and even later, all of it was put together by Chanakya in Arthashastra. Our Panchtantra theory, Tirukural in the south by Thiruvalluvar, all of it has been encapsulated by Chanakya in his seminal work, the Arthashastra. We talked today of, in the strategy about DIME paradigm, D-I-M-E, that means the diplomatic, informational, military, and economical part of it. But this DIME theory earlier, what Chanakya put was the Saptang theory. And Saptang theory is that there are 7 constituents of a state power. One is Jizukchu. Second is, Jizukchu is the king, the top, which today is the political hierarchy which is ruling the country. The second in the line comes Amatyas. Amatyas are the advisors. Then comes the Kosh, the finances who have to run it. Then comes the Durg. And then comes your allies. So the DIME theory which is being propounded today, thousands of years back, has been propounded in a more elaborate manner in terms of the Saptang theory. As far as the diplomacy is concerned, Chanakya said that again it is a mandala theory. The mandala theory is a series of concentric circles, going from the center extending outwards. And I will just give you two examples. It says first that your neighbor is your natural enemy. It is not saying that your neighbor would be your enemy, but it says it would be your natural enemy. Look, wherever you are staying and look at your neighborhood, I'm sure there is always a little khatpat which goes on. So you have to do a little more, you have to put more energy, more resources, more time in making sure that you have very good relations with your neighbors. And you look today at India and its neighborhood, we are literally at cross purposes with all our neighbors. While we have a strategic culture, but my point is that are we aware of that strategic culture, and if we are aware, are we following that strategic culture? So it's very, very important to not only be aware, but also to follow that strategic culture. So this preamble I gave primarily to tell you that our civilizational values, it is just a dip that we took a few hundred years in the thousand years of a continuum doesn't mean anything at all. So I want to tell each one of you who are here, who are from the academia, who are from the industry, that you have it in you. Today, the entire Silicon Valley and whatever, the cutting edge innovations or the technology that comes, everything, most of it is being driven by Indians. And I'm really thankful to Trumping, because by having that kind of a fees to H-1B visa, he's possibly making the task of India that much easier. That talent that we trained and invested so much of money that was flying off for greener pastures to the United States, possibly if we give them an enabling environment here in India, it will come to us. I think he's making things easy. And it is just a portent of a change. If a change to happen, if we have to come back right to the top position, then something has to happen. I think if you look around, whatever changes are happening are a clear indicator that we are arriving. And I don't think anyone can stop the march of India to the glory that it had earlier, to the glory that it has today, and the glory that it will continue to have. I'll come to the subject matter. Conceptually, we have to understand Atmanirbharta means self-confidence, a belief in yourself. I think first, conceptually, you have to understand it. Conceptually, you have to be very clear. And the second thing is the material aspect of it, and that is basically you have to have a strategic autonomy as far as defense manufacturing is concerned. You have to own the complete process, right from innovating, right from developing, manufacturing, and then post-manufacturing. That is keeping upgrades and ensuring that the equipment runs through the complete maintenance cycle. You have to own the complete process. And the third most important thing that is associated with the defense manufacturing also primarily is the R&D and giving that kind of an enabling environment. I think what it needs and what would be the drivers, firstly, it has to be a whole of the government approach. It has to be a complete civil-military fusion. The armed forces services themselves cannot do it. The academia only cannot do it. The defense manufacturers only cannot do it. I think all of us have to come together. It has to be an integrated approach. It has to be an integrative approach. While I was the Southern Army Commander about a year back, we started an institutionalized mechanism because most of the heavy industries are in the Southern Peninsula. So there was an Army Academia Industry User Interface, and we used to have meeting every 15 days, and a whole lot of positive outcome came primarily out of that. What all can be done? And a lot of people talked about DAP. So policy, process, and procedures are extremely important. I think what shackles India today are the policy, process, and procedures. And unfortunately, while we have become independent, but we have got so used to that few hundred years that we still think that we have to stick to the policies, not realizing that today we are the rulers. We are creating policies. Why should I be shackled by policy? And if I have to change a bloody policy, then I must change it. Why am I taking so much of time in changing a policy? You know, so that's why it's important. So as I look at it, you have to look at and you have to observe around as to what is happening. The DAP 2020, we have one of the architects of DAP 2020 amongst us, Air Marshal Sachdev. It was a beautiful document. It was a very forward-looking document. It had strategic partnership model. It has the Make in India IDDM. That means indigenously designed, developed, and manufactured. It had that. It led to IDEX, Aditi, and such kind of a programs. So it gave a very good. But then again, it was a 650-page document. You can't have a 650-page document. You are shackling yourself. It is compliance-driven. It is procedural orthodoxy at its best. It has to be simple. It has to be flexible. It's as simple as that. So we have done a very detailed study as far as DAP 2020 is concerned. I will just very briefly run you over the important parts that we wish those changes will come. The study has already been prepared, finalized in a matter of just 90 days. People say that it cannot done. We finished this study in a matter of 90 days. We have already shared with the Department of Military Affairs and with the MOD. So the first and foremost thing we have said is there cannot be only one acquisition pathway. Whether I buy a helmet or buy a ship or a helicopter or a fighter aircraft, you can't have the same process. I think it is absolutely humanly impossible to have the same process. So you have to have multiple acquisition pathways. I think that is the first substantial change. So we have worked on basically two tracks. One is suggesting transformational ways. And the second, what we have worked out, what is accretion that possibly can be done. The second is the emergency provisions that are there have to be legislated and have to be institutionalized. You have to have a cadre. There has to be a specialized acquisition cadre. You can't have in the service headquarters or in the MOD people coming and spending just about 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. He takes time, somebody takes time 2 to 3 years to understand the complete or to go through even that 650-page voluminous DAP. And to expect him to deliver, I think it'll be, so you have to have specialization and you have to have, especially in the MOD, MOD has to become a very robust organization as far as the Department of Acquisition is concerned. They ought to have financial people. They ought to have people who understand science and technology. They have to have people who understand industry. All of these people have to be together. Only then you can sort of push. Another thing is you have to have performance-based logistics. You have to have spiral development. You can't have, that I want the moon. I want to straight get the moon. You will not get the moon straight away. You will get somewhere, then the version 1 can come, version 2 can come. So there has to be spiral development for that. R&D is something that has to be really pushed through. If Atmanirbharta has to become a reality, we have to invest substantially in the R&D. The industry has to think, you're not here to make money. Anyone who's there in the defense manufacturing first has to think he's an Indian citizen and he has a stake and he is a partner as far as the defense of the country is concerned. Money should not become the only criterion. So the people who have deep pockets have to put more money into the research and development. The government also has to put more money. Why give money only to the DRDO or to the services? I think money needs to be even allocated to the private sectors with absolute, clear understanding of the orders. I understand from the industry point of view that when you start developing a product, it takes time. Defense technology is complex. It is not easy. There is a gestation period. There is a gestation period of nearly about 3 to 4 to 5 years. So it takes capital, it takes time. Unless and until we give you order, it is not feasible for you to invest the money. So there has to be like RFT. If there is something which is already available, you can immediately have a request for trial. Why have only RFPs? If there is something, please have RFT, have a minimum order quantity, and with the industry, with the academia, keep developing that product in a better form. We could have version 1, version 2, or version 3 of it. So these are a lot of changes that we have done. We have also studied, let's say, the United States model. The United States has multiple acquisition pathways. United States also has a centralized agency which is taking care of the complete acquisition and the procurement. The United States also has empowered organizations which are dealing with the procurement. It is not that there are some people who are holding some desk jobs, they are dealing with it. There are empowered organizations with the project executive officers who are there from womb to tomb. He conceptualizes and he finishes the project. That is how you have to look at acquisition and procurement. That is what possibly we have to learn from the United States. The second country that we studied was South Korea. South Korea has an export orientation. South Korea was also besotted with a lot of problems that we have today. But South Korea combined its procurement organization called DAPA. It is Defense Acquisition Program Authority. Just one organization, single point window. It has an export orientation. They have been able to do very well, extremely well. This is something that we can learn from South Korea. And I think a country from whom we have to learn the maximum is Israel. Very simple. I think they are the cutting edge as far as the innovation and absorption is concerned. Why are they the cutting edge? Because it is the same soldier who fights, and after he completes his engagement, he is the same soldier who possibly sits in a government organization or who goes to the industry. And when time comes, he can come back. So there is a very great handshake. There is a great consolidation. There is a great integration. I think that is what integration has to come about. So this is what we have to learn. There is a very close fighter feedback loop. They will develop on the move. Their, Iron Dome came on the run. It is not that they suddenly asked for something and it came in one day. They started it and they kept innovating. They kept improving it. I think this possibly is the pathway. I can go on endlessly as far as DAP because it is very close to my heart. But anyone who wishes to sort of connect to me and understand it more in detail, because I have only 20 and I have a galaxy of speakers who are going to come after me. So I will finish out here as far as this is concerned. But I also want to tell you, it is not just the weapon and the equipment it is important. It is the man behind the machine which is the most important. Just day before, on 23rd of September, I attended Haifa Day. And I want to tell you, how many people know Haifa, the Battle of Haifa? Please raise your hands. So just about 2 or 3 who know about the Battle of Haifa. Haifa is a port city which is on Mediterranean. The battle was fought on 23rd of September 1918. One of the most important, pivotal, vital, and momentous battle that was ever fought in the First World War. Because this battle, I will just first explain about the battle. It was all about the control of the Suez Canal, and the Ottomans and the Germans had launched a campaign to capture the Sinai Peninsula so that they can have access and control over the Suez Canal and choke the supplies of the Allies forces. And the Allies wanted to control the Haifa so that they now have control of the Suez and the Sinai Peninsula, and in turn the Suez Canal. So this was all the motive. Now imagine in that battle, the 15 Cavalry Brigade participated. The 15 Cavalry Brigade comprised of Mysore Lancers, Hyderabad Lancers, and Jodhpur Lancers, 3. And they had just moved in. They had not done their recce, reconnaissance was not complete, but time was of essential. Because if the time was lost, then the Germans and Ottomans could have come, and could have consolidated their positions further. The officer who was commanding was Major Dalpat Singh Shekhawat, and his twice was Captain Aman Rathore. They both decided that it is important to catch the enemy by surprise, rather than waiting for the build-up. By that time, the enemy would also build up. So a cavalry charge, the last documented cavalry charge was made by swords and spears on mounted backs And against whom? Against Germans and Ottomans, who had the latest artillery guns and who had the modern automatic machine guns. So imagine this was a duel between the latest weapons and equipment and the traditional weapons and equipment in form of swords. And the outcome of the battle was that the 15 Cavalry Brigade won, the Jodhpur Lancers, the Hyderabad Lancers, and the Mysore Lancers won the battle by sword and spears pitted against the modern weapons and equipment. And this was a momentous battle, because this battle led to the capture of Haifa, and the capture of Haifa meant the end of First World War. It actually started the beginning of the end of the First World War. It also started the beginning of the end of Ottoman Empire, which collapsed in 22. And once Ottoman Empire collapsed, it led to the creation of Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Israel, Jordan, and Syria. So many countries were formed out of that. And more importantly, it led to self-belief and confidence in India, that Indians, led by Indians, can achieve victory against insurmountable odds. And that self-confidence fueled the Indian freedom struggle back here in the Indian hinterland. This is the most important thing. Before I finish, what the Indian Armed Forces stand for and what will India stand for once we have strategic autonomy as far as defense manufacturing is concerned, as far as innovation is concerned, and as far as armed forces is concerned. In the Navratra, today is the third day. In fact, this time the second and the third day, both are dedicated to Ma Chandraghanta. And I am from Gurkhas. I commanded first 11 Gurkhas. I am from 11 GR. So there is a Navaran mantra in Durga Shapshati when you read it. Om Eng Ring Kling Chamundaya Viche. Most of you may not understand the meaning of this particular thing. I want to tell you the meaning. Please understand every word of it. Every word of it, if we imbibe, then I don't think there is a problem and there is an issue in achieving self-reliance and in making India, Viksit Bharat 2047 a reality. The meaning is, Hey Brahm Rupini, Hey Mahashakti, Mujhe Brahm mein sthit kar, Gati, Mati, Nirmalta, Shanti aur Sthirta pradhan kar. Hey Shama Murti, Mujhe Maryada mein rakh, Shilvan, Vinamr aur Vijay bana, दुख रोग भय और संकटों से मेरी रक्षा कर. हे आनंदमयी माँ, मुझे मधुरता, प्रेम, प्रसन्नता, उत्साह, भावना, सिद्धि, संपन्नता, तुष्टि और पूर्णता प्रदान कर. परम पराक्रम वाली अजय रौद्र रूपिणी चंडी के प्रसन्न हो जाओ. थैंक यू. टेक केयर. गॉड ब्लेस. जय भारत.